What's up, everybody? My name is Joe Brown, and this is Heresy Financial. I'm sure all of us have interacted with Bitcoiners at one time or another who have stated that they will never sell. No matter how high the price goes, no matter how long they hold it for, they will hold it for life. And then when you ask them, well, what's the point? Because if it goes up a lot, you become a millionaire, you become a billionaire, you become a multi-billionaire, but you never take any of your profits. It's like you never even had it in the first place. So what's the point? And then they deliver the classic line, buy, borrow, die. This is the age-old strategy of buying an asset, it appreciates, then you borrow against it, you use that asset as collateral, you borrow against it and use that debt as tax-free income. You hold the asset until you die, you pass it along to your heirs who then receive it with a stepped-up cost basis. But there is a problem with this strategy, specifically how it relates to Bitcoin, or even gold and even cash for that matter. So in this video, I'm going to explain why, if Bitcoin really does become universal money, why hodlers will actually sell and not buy, borrow, die. Ready? Let's dive in. Before we start, please keep in mind that everything I'm saying applies to any asset where the best case scenario is that it becomes the global reserve currency. It becomes universally used money. Gold, silver, other cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, it applies to it all. So don't get your panties in a wad. If you don't like Bitcoin, just pretend I'm saying gold. All right, so I recently did a podcast with Gould, Preston, Pysh from the Investors Podcast, and Greg Foss. It was such a blast talking with these guys. If you haven't seen it yet, I will link it in the description below. But during this conversation, Preston made a comment that I thought was absolutely spot on, and it was a recognition of something that is generally missed by lots of Bitcoiners. He said, once everything is denominated in Bitcoin, you better believe I'm going to be putting back on my value investor hat. Now, this is spot on for a couple of reasons. The first one has to do with the best case scenario for Bitcoin. The best case scenario is coined Hyperbitcoinization, and that is simply just Bitcoin is the global reserve currency. It is the universally used money. Everything is priced in Bitcoin. Now, at this point, once this has taken place, the only appreciation that you have in money is when it appreciates in purchasing power due to technological advancements, economic growth, natural deflation. The reason why Bitcoin is an asymmetric bet right now is because it's not there yet. And for it to get to that point, its market cap must rise exponentially. But once it is universal money, that is no longer the case. It will increase or decrease in purchasing power relative to total economic growth. So at this point, you're probably thinking, what does that have to do with anything? Why does that mean somebody won't stick to the buy, borrow, die strategy? Just because the potential appreciation in price is lower once everything is denominated in Bitcoin doesn't mean they wouldn't follow that strategy, right? Why would anyone sell? Well, we have to remember that once that occurs, you're not selling Bitcoin anymore. You're just using Bitcoin to buy something else. And yes, technically, even today, when you go out to eat and you order a pizza, you're technically selling dollars in exchange for a pizza, and the restaurant is buying dollars while selling pizza. That is how the other side of the transaction works. But the key here is that the prices are denominated in that money. So why does that change things? Why would you not borrow against Bitcoin if everything is priced in Bitcoin? Well, take a step back and think about the differences of a system where prices are all denominated in Bitcoin versus priced in dollars like they are today. The whole point of a monetary system with a fixed supply of money is so that we can experience the natural deflation that happens around us every single day, currently stolen via inflation. This means prices of everything persistently get cheaper over time. People get wealthier by saving. They just have to watch their purchasing power grow. This is in contrast to today, where things get more expensive. Your currency loses purchasing power every day. You get poorer by saving and watching the purchasing power of your savings decline. In light of this, consider what happens to debt. Today, you spend future dollars at today's prices. When you eventually have to pay those dollars back when you get to the future, they are worth less than they were when you borrowed them. It's because it's easier to get your hands on more dollars in the future than it is today. Dollars become more abundant in the future when the money printer is on, when you have inflation, and it gets easier to get your hands on them. Said another way, you need fewer goods and services, less total value to exchange for the same number of dollars in the future compared to today. Dollars are simply more abundant in the future than they are right now. This makes our current system one in which debt is profitable. It is incentivized by inflation. Now consider debt under a hard money system. You spend future dollars at today's higher prices. When you have to pay back those dollars in the future, it is harder to pay it back. It is more difficult to get your hands on dollars in the future than it is today. Dollars are more scarce in the future than they are today because you need more goods and services, higher value, get your hands on in order to exchange for dollars in the future compared to today. Because the money supply hasn't grown, but the wealth has. This means debt is unprofitable. It is punished by deflation. So now let's go back to Bitcoin. We're now in a world where prices globally are denominated in Bitcoin. You want to buy a house, so you have two choices. One, you can pay up some of your hard-earned and saved Bitcoin and buy the house outright. Or you can borrow Bitcoin to buy the house and pay interest on a mortgage priced in Bitcoin for the house. The problem is, in 30 years, that house will be worth less than it's worth today. Remember, deflation. In 30 years, everything will be cheaper. In 30 years, your wages will likely be nominally lower than they are today. In 30 years, you can buy a lot more with that one Bitcoin than you can today. So borrowing Bitcoin is probably the last thing you will do because that Bitcoin denominated debt will become harder to pay, will grow more expensive, and become more and more painful every single year. In a world like that, it is far better to save up first and then pay in full. But wait, I can hear the comments already. Nobody is saying that they're going to buy, then borrow Bitcoin and then die. They're saying they're going to borrow against their Bitcoin. Fundamentally different. As it is today, you use your Bitcoin as collateral and then you borrow dollars. That is true today. So hang with me here for a second. We're talking about in the future, after hyperbitcoinization, once everything is denominated in Bitcoin. Fiat currencies are gone. There are no countries left inflating their currency's purchasing power away. Fiat can't compete with sound money. Everybody has dumped all of their euros, their yen, their dollars. At this point, who in their right mind is going to lend you dollars at a low enough interest rate for that to be profitable for you? That's like going out today and trying to get a loan denominated in continentals. It's not possible. They're worthless. They're gone. Ancient history. And to the extent that any other currencies do survive on their own strength relative to Bitcoin, the interest rate you'd have to pay would compensate for the difference between that currency and base money, Bitcoin. So this strategy works well for legacy assets, and that might never change. But in the scenario where the asset becomes money and the world gets repriced in terms of that asset, and this is key, its supply is permanently fixed. At some point, you will just use it to make purchases. You won't be able to borrow against it, and you won't want to borrow more of it. And this is a good thing. It means the world is the way it's supposed to be, where you work hard, you save well, you watch your purchasing power of your savings grow over time. You avoid debt because it's profitable to avoid debt. And you can choose conservative investments wisely based on fundamentals and not be forced to try and beat inflation by betting the farm on a central bank blown bubble. And if you'd like to buy assets that might become money in the future, like gold or Bitcoin, I've got affiliate links for my recommended resources down in the description below. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.